For generations, the ultimate global nightmare wasn't a pandemic or a financial crash, it was a singular event. The moment the rivalry between the United States and Russia stops being cold and turns hot. We live in a world fractured by proxy battles, digital espionage, and crumbling treaties. Now, we must ask the question that haunts military strategists. What happens if the containment fails? What if the United States and Russia go to war? US versus Russia, the unthinkable war. To understand how a direct war could start, we first have to understand the deep-seated mistrust that fuels it. For decades, Washington and Moscow held the world hostage with the threat of nuclear annihilation. Then came 1991. The Soviet Union fell, and the West believed the great game was over. But from Moscow's perspective, the story was different. They saw NATO creeping toward their doorstep. They saw their former sphere of influence absorbed by Western alliances. They saw a superpower being backed into a corner. By the 2000s, the dormant conflict reawakened. Massive data breaches, accusations of meddling in elections, the seizure of Crimea, brutal proxy fights in Syria and Ukraine, the slow death of nuclear arms control. The war never really ended, it just mutated, becoming silent, digital, and infinitely more volatile. If this war turns into real fighting, the first shots won't be fired by tanks. They will be fired in silence, followed by darkness. Cyber warfare units in both nations have spent years probing the other's weak points, electrical grids, oil pipelines, financial hubs, and satellite networks. In a full-scale conflict, expect a massive, coordinated Russian cyber offensive targeting the GPS systems we rely on for everything, Wall Street and global banking data, civil aviation controls, the power plants keep our cities running. The United States would strike back with its own arsenal, deploying some of the most sophisticated digital weapons in existence. Before a soldier sets foot on the ground, the front line is everywhere, invisible, global. Plausible deniability is gone. If cyber war is phase 1, Eastern Europe is phase 2, the physical breaking point. This region is a minefield of historic grievances and rigid military treaties. One wrong move here, even a simple error in judgment, could force an escalation nobody can stop. War games suggest 3 likely scenarios where the spark could ignite. Flashpoint 1, the Suwalki Gap. A tiny corridor, only 65 miles wide, links NATO territories. If Russia moves to sever this artery, NATO has no choice but to respond with overwhelming force. Flashpoint 2, escalation in Ukraine. A sudden collapse on the front lines or a stray missile hitting a NATO member state could drag American forces directly into the fight. Flashpoint 3, the Baltic states. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania rely entirely on US protection. Any Russian incursion here triggers Article 5. The US would have to fight or watch the NATO alliance disintegrate overnight. There is no version of a US-Russia war that ignores the ultimate reality: nuclear weapons. Combined, they control over 11,000 warheads. The immediate threat isn't necessarily a planned apocalypse, it's an accident, a glitch in a radar system, a launch warning that turns out to be false, a cyber attack that mimics a nuclear strike. Both superpowers operate on a launch-on-warning doctrine. This gives leadership only minutes, sometimes seconds, to make a civilization-ending choice. In the fog of war, this hair trigger system becomes the most dangerous thing on Earth. While armies clash, the economic war will be just as devastating. Russia would immediately weaponize its energy supplies, turning off the tap to Europe. The shock would be instant. The US would counter with a total economic blockade, targeting the central banking system, critical technology imports, energy revenues, every major trade route. This wouldn't just be a recession, it would be a complete restructuring of the global economy. A war between Washington and Moscow cannot be contained. The shockwaves hit everyone. China. Beijing could use the chaos to advance its own agenda, seizing contested territory while the West is distracted. Europe. NATO nations would effectively become fortress states, mobilizing for a long, grueling defense. The Middle East. Energy markets would panic, sending oil prices skyrocketing as nations scramble to secure supply. The swing states, India, Turkey, the Gulf. These powers become the new kingmakers, deciding whether to pick a side, remain neutral, or profit from the stalemate. So, what does a direct confrontation actually look like? It's not just ICBMs raining down. It's not just World War II style tank battles. It is a grinding, multi-dimensional siege. It is cyber war. It is energy war. It is economic war. It is information war. It is shadow fighting in the forests of Eastern Europe. All happening under the darkest shadow of all, the nuclear umbrella. Direct war between the US and Russia is not a destiny, but the components are already in place. Deep misunderstandings, national pride, contested borders, digital weaponry, and fragile treaties. As the temperature rises, history offers us a grim reminder. Great powers rarely choose to go to war. They stumble into it. If you want to see more AI-powered breakdowns of geopolitical scenarios, like the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, comment below, and catch the next episode.